think about interviews and preparing for interviews in 3 buckets. So the first is research, the second is prep, and the third is practice. So you talked a little bit about like how do you show up for an interview and make a good first impression. You want to turn up feeling confident, looking confident, and conveying that you are excited to be there. And I think the only way you can convey that image is if you've done those 3 things. So these are actually common mistakes I see people make not doing these 3 things. So the first really important thing is to research the company, to research the industry, and to research the person who is interviewing you. And the most important part is to look at the company, but not just the company. Think about the product that the person or the group that you're interviewing with is working on. And don't just read about it. The key thing is to have an opinion on it, because it's highly likely that the person who's interviewing you will ask you a question about that. So that's research. The second is prep, which is Google interview questions that are asked in this industry and come up with mock answers for them, and then find people in your network, so people who are the year above you at school who might have done those interviews, and ask them what questions they got asked, right? And then finally, practice. So I used to do this before all my interviews. I actually still do it sometimes before I have a speaking engagement. I really encourage you to write mock answers and stand in front of the mirror and rehearse them. And then finally, if there are people in your network who've done similar interviews, ask them to practice with you. My biggest piece of advice for you guys is it's not enough to just have an interest. Go to the next level. What is that specific interest? What is an outcome you're looking to get out of that interest? And then on the projects you worked on, talk about the impact that those projects had. So it's not enough to say, I built X, Y, or Z. I built X, Y, or Z, and it impacted this many users, or I learned these sorts of insights from it, or it added to a project I'm already working on with these other people at my school or my college. The Built by Girls team should raise their hands, because the Built by Girls team are the best people I've ever hired in my life. I want to give them a huge shout out. Every single person on the Built by Girls team, I made do a case study, I made do an assignment, and they're all the most impressive assignments I've ever seen. But if you don't get asked to do an assignment, one of the things you can do is actually follow up with a piece of work. You can say, I thought about this thing we discussed that's relevant to this role, and I went ahead and I thought about it and I wanted to send it to you. This is if you really, really want the job, right? It can be hard when you're interviewing for 10 things at a time. So when I interviewed for the role of Chief of Staff at the AOL brand group, I knew I really, really wanted the job. So I went away and I wrote a plan for what I was going to do in the first 90 days to help the CEO. And after my interviews, I sent it to her. And the dirty little secret is I know that she was about to make an offer to someone else, but she got my assignment and she changed her mind and she made me the offer. So there are always things you can do after an interview cycle to show that you're the person for the job.